Our next story is from India. Indian stand-up comic Kunal Kamra is caught in the eye of a massive political storm for doing what he does best, cracking jokes. Kamra's jokes ruffled the feathers of the ruling political party of Maharashtra, with the Deputy Chief Minister Eknath Shinde calling it a hit job. Speaking to BBC Marathi, Eknath Shinde said Kamra's remark was not a case of free speech, but a case of undertaking a supari or a contract to speak against someone. Responding to the vandalism at Kamra's show venue, the Deputy Chief Minister even hinted at Newton's law. Shinde said that he does not support vandalism, but every action has an equal reaction. And while he has a high level of tolerance, party workers may not have the same. It is not only the Deputy Chief Minister Eknath Shinde, but earlier Shiv Sena leader Sanjay Nirupam also alleged that Kamra's show is funded by none other than Shinde's political rival, the former Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Uddhav Thackeray. Meanwhile, trouble seems to be mounting for the stand-up comedian. The Mumbai police are probing if Kunal Kamra's jokes targeting Shiv Sena chief were part of a conspiracy and whether the comic received money or any other form of help to mock the Maharashtra Deputy CM. Earlier, the Maharashtra government had sought an apology from Kamra, calling it a political contract act. The government also said that Kamra's bank statements would also be scrutinized to find out if anyone motivated him to crack such a joke on Shinde. However, Kamra held his ground. In a social media post, Kamra maintained that he does not fear mob and that he will not apologize for his comments. However, he agreed to cooperate with the police and courts for any lawful action taken against him. The comedian faces multiple charges, including defamation and statements conducing to public mischief. Now, during a performance at Mumbai's Habitat studio, Kunal Kamra took aim at Eknath Shinde with a parody of a hit song from the 1997 movie, what we told you about yesterday as well, Dil To Pagal Hai. He mocked the Shiv Sena leader who led a rebellion against Uddhav Thackeray in 2022, accusing him of being a traitor and contributing to the fall of Thackeray's government and the party's split. In response to Kamra's comments, Shiv Sena workers vandalized the studio, a popular spot for stand-up comedy events that has now been forced to shut down operations indefinitely. In the past 2 days, the debate around Kunal Kamra's stand-up act has primarily been focused on freedom of speech, but in the background is a more important story. The venue announced its closure in a social media post. But what went unsaid beyond the damage worth millions of the venue, it is the jobs lost of lower middle class employees who had no role to play in Kamra's recorded act. Neither did the venue's owner. But in the end, it is not the comedian or the lawmakers who have suffered immensely. It is the common people and regular employees at a venue who have borne the brunt of a joke not taken well. Moving on and shifting our focus to Canada, Canadians once topped the list of global travelers to the US. But they are now increasingly keeping away from traveling to the neighbor. The reason? US President Donald Trump's renewed threats on annexing Canada and imposing trade tariffs. Data shows a sharp dip in the number of trips taken by Canadians both by air and the land route. As per data from Statistics Canada, the country's national statistical agency, Canadians returned from 13% fewer trips by air to the US in February than they did a year ago. Not just that, land border crossings too fell, with the same outlet reporting that return trips from the US undertaken by Canadians in February dropped 23% from a year earlier. What explained this? You see, as per the Wall Street Journal, more than Trump's tariff threats, his annexation plans have caused a great deal of anxiety among the Canadians, who are now increasingly unwilling to take trips across the border. Reports of prolonged detentions for tourists and green card holders have further discouraged them to holiday in the US. Just after Trump announced new tariffs soon after he took office, then Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, encouraged Canadians to change their vacation plans to focus on exploring sites within the country and perhaps not travel to the US. And it seems to have worked wonders for domestic tourism. But this could be bad news for the US economy. As per the US Travel Association Trade Group, Canadians made 20.2 million visits to the US in 2024. And experts warn that a 10% drop could lead to $2 billion in lost revenue and more than 14,000 jobs lost. That's huge, and the impact is already being felt. Cities and small towns near the US-Canada border. And what does the Trump administration have to say about this? Well, it remained firm on the US president's conviction of turning Canada into the 51st American state, with the White House spokesperson Anna Kelly saying in an email that once Canadians become Americans, their international travel worries would be resolved once and for all. The Trump impact, by the way, that has not just affected the travel aspect of Canadians, but also their daily lifestyles. More and more Canadians are opting for homegrown options for groceries and other essentials. In short, they're going local, with more and more consumers embracing a Buy Canadian movement. Now, is this shift to going local for always, or will proposed tariffs in other sectors bring about a change in how Canadians think and act? The coming days will reveal. Benjamin Netanyahu wants me dead. That's the shocking allegation made by Israel's top domestic intelligence agency chief, Ronen Bar. Yes, you heard that right. Let me repeat that. The head of Israel's spy agency, Shin Bet, has accused the Israeli Prime Minister, Netanyahu, of trying to imprison or, in his words, even execute him. According to reports in Israeli media, Bar told Israeli ministers, and I'm quoting him here, "Yesterday you accused me of treason. Today you're threatening to send me to jail. Tomorrow you will execute me." But why is Bar saying this against the Israeli Prime Minister? Well, there's history to this. Bar on multiple occasions has said that Netanyahu is trying to remove him as the head of Shin Bet. And just 2 weeks ago, Netanyahu made these allegations public. Take a listen.
Citizens of Israel, we are in the midst of a war for our very existence, a war on 7 fronts. At all times, but especially in an existential war like this, the Prime Minister must have full confidence in the head of the Shin Bet Domestic Security Service. But unfortunately, the reality is the opposite. I do not have such trust. I have an ongoing lack of trust in the head of the Shin Bet Security Service, a distrust that has only grown over time.
Netanyahu further accused the Shin Bet of attempting to topple his government. And his decision to sack Bar, in Netanyahu's words, was in order to prevent a civil war from breaking out and to ensure that Israel remains a democratic state. But Netanyahu was unable to proceed any further. That's because Israel's Supreme Court quickly intervened and put a temporary freeze on Netanyahu's decision to sack Bar. And it was not only the country's top court that took up this matter. Thousands of Israelis across the country condemned Netanyahu's decision and launched widespread demonstrations. On your screens right now are visuals from Tel Aviv from just 3 days ago. Thousands of Israelis congregated together to demonstrate against Netanyahu for attempting to dismiss Bar, accusing him of removing people who opposed his rule and holding his government accountable. Now, the Shin Bet and Netanyahu have been at odds ever since the October 7th Hamas attack, with Netanyahu blaming the Shin Bet for failing to prevent the incident from happening. On the contrary, The Shin Bet report found Netanyahu's policies on Gaza, such as allowing the supply of major funds to Hamas, including some directly, as one of the major factors leading to the attacks on Israel. However, Netanyahu has rejected all these findings. Furthermore, the Shin Bet is also investigating Netanyahu and other members of his office for allegedly taking money from the Qatari government. What for? For favorable interest for the Gulf state. It's important to note here that Netanyahu is currently under trial for fraud and bribery, among other such charges, for attempting to garner positive coverage of himself from Israeli media. According to reports, Netanyahu is aiming to replace Barr with a person who will drop all the investigations against him and his government. And a final call on whether Barr's dismissal is illegal will be taken by Israel's Supreme Court next month. Well, whatever the outcome may be, Barr's allegation of Netanyahu wanting him dead have only made this clash between Bibi and Barr increasingly bitter. Our next story is about the Ukraine war. Just minutes ago, the White House released a statement on the talks between American and Ukrainian delegations in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, which has been happening for the past few days. It says that the US and Ukraine have agreed to ensure safe navigation, eliminate the use of force, and prevent the use of commercial vessels for military purposes in the Black Sea. It says that Kiev and Washington have agreed to develop measures for implementing a ban on strikes against energy facilities in Russia and Ukraine. And most importantly, the statement says that the US and Ukraine will continue working towards a durable and lasting peace and welcome third countries to support the implementation of maritime and energy agreements. Well, this statement by the White House, this is the outcome from talks between US and Ukraine separately. US and Russian officials also met in Riyadh. Earlier, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Black Sea shipping was discussed with American counterparts and that Russia will be willing to strike a deal, but only if the US orders Ukraine to respect it. The American and Russian officials reportedly met for 12 hours on Monday. A statement from that meeting is expected soon, but as far as battleground is concerned, despite the ongoing talks to end the war, Ukraine and Russia are still exchanging fire on the ground. Overnight, Ukraine reported that Russia launched 139 drones and 1 ballistic missile. According to Ukraine's statement this morning, they shot down 78 drones launched by Russia. Another 34 were reportedly decoys that did not carry explosives and caused no damage. Meanwhile, in Kursk, Ukraine claims that an airstrike killed up to 30 Russian soldiers at a military site. Remember, Ukraine had launched an incursion into the Kursk region last August. But we've been telling you on the show here how in recent weeks, its forces have begun withdrawing under pressure from Russia. Both Russia and the US say that many Ukrainian troops were trapped in the Kursk region. But Ukraine denies all of this. Now, across the border, Russia reportedly carried out drone strikes in several parts of Ukraine overnight. The Kiev region was targeted early in the day, and firefighters worked to extinguish a fire at a warehouse. No casualties were reported. And in the eastern regions of Kharkiv and Sumy, Russian strikes destroyed several buildings and vehicles. Ukraine's military reported that Russia conducted 76 aviation strikes and used 794 drones against Ukrainian targets. Meanwhile, on Tuesday, the Kremlin accused the Ukrainian military of targeting Russian journalists in Moscow-controlled eastern Ukraine, resulting in a fatal strike. On Monday, a Ukrainian artillery strike reportedly killed 6 people, including the 2 journalists and their driver in Luhansk region of eastern Ukraine, which is controlled by Russia and where Ukraine launched an attack. Maria Zakharova, who is the Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson, described it as a targeted attack on a civilian vehicle carrying journalists. expressing condolences to the families of those who lost their lives. Meanwhile, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov accused Ukraine of targeting the journalist as well. Take a listen.
The fire was targeted. They were deliberately targeted to kill them. The Kyiv regime continues its atrocities against journalists and people who do not have weapons in their hands. This is the nature of the Kyiv regime. And this is yet another justification of our special military operation.
Now, here's why these attacks matter. You see, these attacks coincide with negotiations in Saudi Arabia between Russia and American officials. And that's regarding a possible ceasefire in the war. And we just told you about the statement that came out after the meeting between Ukraine and the US officials. Now, all this has been challenging as both Kiev and Moscow sides continue to attack each other with drones and missiles. According to news agency AP, a major sticking point is that what target would be off limits to strike. While the White House said energy and infrastructure would be covered, the Kremlin has said that the deal referred more narrowly to energy infrastructure. Zelensky has emphasized the need to protect infrastructure like railways and ports. On Monday, talks in Riyadh aimed to address differences between Ukraine and Russia, including a potential pause in Black Sea attacks, which has happened from the Ukraine side. And meanwhile, on Tuesday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Moscow supports renewing the Black Sea initiative to ensure safe grain exports through the strategic waterway. But Lavrov warned that it must come with clear guarantees that Russia believes the US should demand from Ukraine. Ultimately, the talks in Riyadh lasted nearly 12 hours. While one part of the details have surfaced a short while back, we're still awaiting details from the Russia-US meet.